distinct pleasure to introduce a panel of experts. All of whom have worked in Indonesia for many years or come from Indonesia, all experts in their respective areas. Let me start with Ambassador Dino Djalal. Ambassador Dino Djalal has been here since last summer as the ambassador to the United States. He was, before coming here, was a speechwriter, youth activist, academic, and the author of a national bestseller. He was special staff to President Yudhoyono and has joined the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1987 after receiving a doctorate in economic political science from the London School of Economics. He's also the founder of a group called Modernizator, which is a movement of like-minded, progressive and reformist young leaders who embrace the slogan service, innovation, excellence, openness and connectivity. Okay, so Ambassador Dino, let's start with you. We had a video here which said Indonesia, remarkable Indonesia, look at us now, an example for the rest of the world. You have increasing interest in Indonesia as an example of economic transition, of stable economic development. In your role as ambassador to the US, what would you describe as sort of the achievements and the challenges, particularly as Indonesia emerges as a leader on the global stage, as a chair of ASEAN, and as a member of the G20?
Okay, well, thanks for that question, Stefan. By the way, the one sentence I remember most from Subang's comment was Indonesia will get old before it gets rich, and it's impressive because that's the story of my life, really. I can tell you my wife that. And also, first, before anything else, I want to say thank you to Stefan and David for organizing this event. You know, we at the World Bank, we have a good deal. You know, the World Bank loans us billions of dollars, and we loaned the World Bank Sri Mulyani. It's not going to be a fair deal because last time some economists valued Sri Mulyani at $10 trillion. So if you want me to summarize Indonesia's progress, let me do it this way. It's the year 2000, and what do they say about Indonesia? They said Indonesia was, in the words of Thomas Friedman, a messy state. Indonesia was a basket case, according to some other people. Indonesia was heading towards failed state. Indonesia was the Balkan, the next Balkanized country. It will break up. Extremely corrupt. Somebody said even Indonesia was the sick man of Asia. We had low growth. I think the economy in the year 2000 was growing at about 1% or 2%, and it's very, very, very low. So fast forward. That's the special effect, by the way. 2010. What do they say about Indonesia now? Indonesia is the third largest democracy in the world. It's the strongest democracy in Southeast Asia. It's the largest economy in Southeast Asia. It has the largest middle class in Southeast Asia. We don't call ourselves the third world country anymore because, you know, it presumes there's a first class passenger, second class passenger, and third class passenger. We don't like to be called third class. We call ourselves emerging economy. We are a G20 economy, and we have a G20 mindset in seeing the world. We consider ourselves an environmental superpower because 1/3 of Indonesia's forests are in Indonesia. There is a sea change in Indonesia in how we see ourselves today and where we are in the world. And along the way, we have become path breakers. We have become path breakers. What does that mean? We have been able to create both democracy and along the way, we have also become path breakers. What does that mean? We broke some of the stereotypes that used to surround democracy. We have achieved both democracy and development at the same time. What does that mean? That means we don't longer have to choose either democracy or development, but we can actually have both. Democratic development is very strong in Indonesia. At the same time, we're achieving strong economic growth. We grew 4.5% during the global financial crisis, and now we're expecting to grow around 6%. We are proving that democracy, Islam, modernity, and women's rights can go along. And I think this is a great example, both to democracies elsewhere and also to the Islamic world. We're proving that we can have democracy and also national unity. Indonesians were very worried about this because they thought democracy would break up Indonesia. And we can marry democracy and stability. Not many countries can achieve that, but we have been able to achieve that. Now, I think the most important thing is the mindset change. What does that mean? You know, in the last 3 elections, we had 85% of the population came out to vote. Now, even though in one year we had to vote 3 times, twice for the parliamentary and 1 for the president, they all came out in great numbers. You know, the faith in democracy is unbelievable in Indonesia. After 3 elections, we still kept that faith up. In fact, one of the most important statistics I know is that 85% of Indonesians, despite what they think of the president or the opposition of any political party, despite all that, they believe, 85% believe that Indonesia is in the right direction, right? So I think that is an important lesson to be had. I mean, one lesson was that people always said when I was growing up and started working for the government that Indonesia is a difficult country to run. You know, it's going to break away, it's going to do this, there's going to be chaos, it's going to turn upside down, you know, and it's just going to be so difficult to run. And this is what the argument that President Suharto used to use all the time, you know, and we used to use it all the time, and we believe it. But the fact is, after we cross over to democracy, all it takes is a little bit of the right leadership, a little bit of the right policy, and a little bit of the right mindset. You know, just you have little things right here and there, and things fall into place. You know, this is, I think, one of the best lessons that we can get. The other lesson is that you know, have faith in democracy. And there's one quote that even people who hate democracy love democracy. But the point is that there's going to be bad moments in our democratic development. But if you have faith in the system, if you have faith that things will get better, then I think you will have good democratic prospects. But what I want to tell you, Stefan, is that you know, we had some good presentations about Indonesia's development, and you reflected on that as well. But what I want to say is that Indonesia is just good. It's not great, right? The moment we say we're great, you know, absolutely, we're good and we're not great. We're now moving to gear 3 if we're driving, but we need to shift to gear 4 and gear 5. Yeah. Now, it's very important for us to know that all the great projections about Indonesia is something that we can achieve if we work hard and make the adjustments. It's not automatic. You know, I look at all the projections. There's this BRIC, you know, the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now people are talking about the next 11, the N11, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Iran, Pakistan, Nigeria, blah, 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 and Indonesia. Indonesia is included in it. And people are talking about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, Indonesia, China, and South Africa. Indonesia is again included in it as the next emerging countries. And then there's the CHIVETS, you know, HSBC, the CEO came up with that. Colombia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Turkey, and South Africa, right? And you got all these other acronyms. Indonesia is always in it. So the good news is that the analysts think Indonesia is a country of the future, but Indonesians owe it to themselves to say that this is not going to be a linear future. It's not, don't take it for granted, because the moment we do so, we're going to lose that future. We do have problems. What are these problems? I think the challenge is, one, I would say, keep the spirit of reforms alive. Now, if you look at countries that are reforming around the world, reforms does lose steam. You know, idealism does lose steam. Not just in America, not just in other places, everywhere. The threat, the risk is that reform mindset lose steam, people with the wrong mindset go into place, and people become more pragmatic, they get into money politics, and so on and so on. So the trick is, after 3 elections, how do you keep reforms alive and not lose steam? Again, I don't have an answer, but this is a challenge for Indonesia. Secondly, there's a challenge of how democracy works in the new policy environment. Now, what does that mean? When I work with the president inside the presidential palace, one of the key things and most difficult things is Indonesia has become a very large place. In the Suharto days, Indonesia was 1 point. President Suharto said A, and by the next day, his decision would carry it all the way to the governor, the region, to the village level, right? Because he's so centralized and he was so strong, right? But now with everybody being directly elected by people, everybody having their own mandate, Indonesia becomes a very large place with 1,000 and 10,000 points of policy makers. And how does the president and the government work together in such a dense and crowded and confusing policy jungle? That is the big question. Some people may criticize my president now. Things are going so slow. You know, he promised this, but it didn't happen. Look, the next president of Indonesia and all the presidents afterwards will face the same problem, because he will have to convince the governor and the regions who will have their own mandate to say, look, I don't have to follow you. And Indonesia is the fourth largest country in the world. So democracy has become an art by itself. Governance and leadership has become an art by itself. And politicians who think they can become president and get things done, like Suharto did, are dreaming, right? They have to get used to this new policy environment. Secondly, our challenge is the rise of mass authoritarianism. This concerns me, you've been reading about this. The state authoritarianism is gone. The state no longer violates human rights of individuals. It no longer kidnap people at night or extrajudicial killing and things like that. But now you see more of that at the mass level, right? I don't know why exactly, right? But there's a tendency of rising that in Indonesia. Now, our democracy must be able to contain this, because, you know, let's stop being weary. What do you call it? Starry-eyed about democracy. Democracy does two things. It can bring the best in society. It can bring also the worst in society. In America, you see this also, right? The trick for leaders, for government, for politicians, how do you create a system whereby you bring out more best, more good in a democracy than more bad, right? But mass authoritarianism is one issue, and another issue is diversity issues. I don't know why exactly again, but you know, we see a lot more diversity issues rising to the fore. Conflict between religions, conflict, people become more religiously sensitive, ethnic sensitivity, and so on and so on. Again, this is something that is real on the ground, and our democracy must find a way to resolve these things, the way it has been able to resolve the issues of development and national unity. Bureaucracy is also a problem. Again, for any reforming government, bureaucracy does not take part in elections. So when a new leader comes, the bureaucrats say, well, okay, you tell us what you do, but there's a lot of vested interest as well in the bureaucracy, right? So getting the bureaucracy to be part of change, that is one big challenge for Indonesia. And again, one other thing, one challenge is dogmatism. There's still a battle for the soul of Indonesia that still goes on. You know, it goes on in the media, it goes on in parliament, it goes on within government, it goes on in the academia. You know, people who want to bring Indonesia forward, and people who think Indonesia, we like the old days, we like the status quo, you know, and people who like Indonesia to be open, and people who like Indonesia to be less tolerant, you know. So the battle between all these forces, the progressive forces and the conservative forces, goes on, and they fight for the soul of our country. And so these are the things, the challenges that our democracy must face. But the constants, this is why I'm very optimistic about my country's future. The constants for Indonesia's politics is that we will continue to have stability. The present government will be there until 2014. We will continue to have good growth, 6.5%, maybe even 7 or 8% by the time President Dino steps down, and a deepening democracy. Democracy not just in Jakarta, but throughout Indonesia. And our success is due not to one big grandiose policy. You know, there's no one big, you know, big concept that transforms Indonesia. Our success is due to the fact that in the last 11 or 12 years, there's the collective sum of good, big, medium, and small policies exceed the collective sum of good, medium, and small bad policies and mistakes. You know, we make mistakes all the time, all the time. You look at the newspapers, you look, you know, there's silly decisions that we have to, I don't know where they came up from, right? But in the end, the sum of the big, medium, and small good policies exceed the bad, medium, big, and small policies. And as a last point, I want to say, you asked me if there's some point that I can say about how Indonesia relates to the situation in the Middle East. Yeah, I see a lot of it actually. You know, in the situation of Egypt, the Indonesian democratic experience can be relevant at least on 4 counts on how we did it, 4 or 5. You know. Very quickly, I'll go through it. One is that we had a very strong transition figure in President Habibie. You know, he didn't have a mandate. He was not even Japanese, you know, and he wasn't elected. But he carried his very short term of 1 year to the max. You know, he just became very reformist at heart. Right? In that 1 year, he achieved a lot more than other presidents achieved in that term. Right? So, Egypt, if they have that in the vice president, I think would benefit as well. Now, secondly, Indonesia kept the ruling elite and worked with the ruling elite and pushed that to become part of change. Now, this is a mistake that America made in Iraq. You took out the Ba'ath Party before anyone else was ready to assume government, and the result was some kind of more problems that you created. Now, in Indonesia, the Golkar and the other constituent parties kept in power. The military was kept there and worked together towards a consensus progress. Number 3, the military in Indonesia became the strongest proponent of reform. Right? The military in Indonesia took itself out of politics. In fact, it decided it wanted to remove politics, to gradually remove itself from politics, even before Suharto stepped down. Right? So that was very important because this is what people see as the yardstick. 4th, elections. You know, part of the reason why there was so much frustration and anger was that over 30 years, all these pent-up political, social, and economic problems in Egypt did not have any political channelization, right? Whereas in Indonesia, every 5 years, no matter what people think, you know, in 2004, people were really also fed up and frustrated, but they had the elections, right? And that elections, took a lot of steam out of the political, social, and economic anger, right? And so the lesson was that election became a useful political tool of self-preservation of the system in Indonesia. And I think Egypt, the election in September, should be used for that. And 5th, of course, the role of civil society, which was very important in Indonesia. So having said that, I want to close by saying, you know, all these things that I said to you, I think the key for Indonesia in the future, if you want to get from good to great, is the ability to evolve the right kind of nationalism. Right? Now, you know, I think this is also true for other countries, including America. I think it's the ability for Indonesians to evolve an open, moderate, tolerant, pluralistic nationalism of the 21st century, which is very important, which is going to be very different than the nationalism of the 20th century. And that 20th century nationalism will need to connect with a healthy internationalism, which means we don't retreat from the world, but we see the world as an opportunity. We see the world as a place where we can strengthen peace and enhance our security environment, and so on and so on. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador.